All right, so a good evening to everyone. My name is Omer. I'm the community manager for Diversion, and today we're going to talk about setting up Diversion with Unreal Engine 5. We're going to start a five, I believe I have 561 that I'm using for this demo. We're going to start a project from scratch using the third person template. So let me share my screen and walk you through it. All right. So, in order to get started with Diversion, first thing you have to do is to get and download Diversion. You can do that from our website, diversion.dev. And what you get is this desktop client that we have. It is very similar to other desktop version control clients because at the end of the day, in all of them, you see your repositories, your local clones, and you can use them to manage them. So there's no big surprise here. I can see, as I said, my local workspaces and all of my remote repositories. And I also have here a third-person template from the 5.6 templates. And what I want to do to get started, first order of business is to create a new repository for my project. And I can, of course, do it through here, through the appropriately named new repository button. And I would have to find the folder on my computer where the project is, and I can create a new repository. I could also, since this is Unreal, I can use our plugin. So if I go into my plugins and find Diversion, I have our Unreal plugin, which is available for free on Fab. And what that lets me do once I go through the slightly tedious Fab process of adding to the library and then downloading and then enabling inside the project, what that lets me do is right here on the bottom right under connect to revision, revision control, and connect to revision control, it adds diversion to my list of providers, of possible providers. So if you don't see diversion here, it means that something's wrong with your plugin. Maybe you didn't enable it. But once I select diversion as my version control provider, I can say initialize project with diversion. And what that's going to do is going to take a couple of seconds and it's going to say that it's finished and it's syncing. So we are now set up and good to go. And we're starting to use diversion. Right? We can see it said we were syncing here on also on the bottom right. Now it says we are synced. And if I go into the back into the app, I can see the brand new repository right over here, both the local clone and the remote repository right over here, DV demo. If I step inside into my workspace and I take a look, then I can see all the files that need to be added in a nice friendly blue color that says that they are intended to be added. And you'll notice, of course, that some of the files are missing, right? The saved folder or the intermediate folder, right? They are ignored by default of course, on purpose. We have the dv ignore file configured for you, comes right out of the box, so you don't have to worry about it if you're familiar with other solutions like Git with LFS or Perforce. So there's no P4 types to worry about, and there's no Git ignore and Git attributes for your LFS storage. There's none of that. We just treat your files the same, and we look at the files on your drive. And we have an ignore file that's pre-configured for the big three engines. So that's Unity, Unreal, and Godot. It's actually, you can see that it is the first commit, right? So when starting a new repository, the first commit we do for you with the dvignore file. And then what I would have to do is to commit my changes, just like a version control client. I can use this here. I can diff, right? Right now, all the files have been created, so there's no diff, but I can see text files side by side. I can also see image files, and we also support 3D models. Now, off the top of my head, I don't remember which 3D models we support. It's at least FBX. Um, could be OBJ. Not sure off the top of my head, but anyway, I can select all of my files and I like to commit them. My first commit, so I'm going to call it the third person template because that's the content that we have. Right now, you'll notice that this commit was really fast, right? Despite having however many megabytes of content here. This is because the content was already synced to the diversion servers. So as far as I'm aware, the sync mechanism that we have is unique, at least across all version control systems that I know. It does a couple of things. First thing it does is it syncs you. It keeps you up to date with the server as you work. So it keeps you backed up as you work. Whenever files change on your computer, whenever you save them, the files are uploaded to the diversion servers. So if for whatever reason, I don't know, the building catches fire and you have to run out, then your work is always retrievable even before you commit it. So just by the act of making a change and saving it. However, that does not mean that it's available to anyone else other than you. It's only in your workspace. So there's no risk of your half-baked, half-done changes propagating out to any other team members. They can't see it. So the act of committing in diversion is the act of revealing your changes to other team members. So that's why while we were syncing, everything was uploaded to the servers, and when I committed, it was just super fast and essentially just an API call. So there was no data being sent over for the commit itself. And the sync mechanism also has the other end of it. So when I committed my changes, right now it's just me, myself, and I in my home office. But if I had collaborators in my repository, when I committed my changes, they would have the changes downloaded automatically on their machines, like on their end, on their workspaces. So as long as we don't have any conflicting changes, so I don't, my changes don't just come and override their work as they're working. So as long as we don't have conflicting changes, as long as we are on the same branch, and we'll talk about branching in a second, and as long as they didn't specifically opt out of being auto updated here in this switch right here, then they would get the changes. The option to opt out of it is a feature we added mostly for larger Unreal teams. If you're familiar, then if you have a project that uses both CPP and blueprints, if you expose uh, CPP methods to blueprints, you would need to have the compiled files as well as the blueprint. And if you have the blueprint without the compiled binaries, your project might crash, it might not run. And for larger teams that have artists as well as developers, for some pipelines, for some workflows, it makes a lot of sense to opt out of automatically receiving changes depending on your workflow. So this was committing through the app. By the way, feel free to send me questions in chat. Don't worry about interrupting me. You can also, if you're on Zoom, there's like a raise your hand feature. You can feel free with any questions you have. So that was from committing from the app. I can also do the same thing through the editor thanks to the plugin. So we're going to use the third person character blueprint quite a bit. Again, this is just the default one from the template. Let's say I make a change here, my super meaningful gameplay logic. Start with printing a string on begin play, which is possibly the most basic thing you can do. So I committed my changes, I compiled my changes. Now I'm going to save. And the moment I saved, the upload starts, right? Uploading of the file to the servers start. And it was pretty fast. So you can see it's already done. So the commit button is enabled right here on the bottom right from the revision control menu, and I can commit my changes. I can also see it here in the app. I can see that the blueprint was modified, and I could also see from the content browser that it was modified. The Unreal Editor side of the interface is just the standard one. So if you're familiar with other visual control solutions, it would look very familiar to you. So let's go ahead and commit our changes. I'm gonna hit this button, and I am always very surprised to hear that there are people who don't know this. If I well, from this nice commit window, if I double click, I can diff my changes inside the editor. So I can see a side-by-side comparison. If I had made any changes to the components, like if I changed the max walk speed, then it would have popped up. I would have seen it here as well. So I can really see the graph. And if I'm satisfied, then I can write a meaningful and informative commit message and commit it. And it would look the same in the history view. It looks the same as any commit done through the app. John, I see your question. A couple of questions that come to mind. Do workspaces count towards repo storage limits, or can org admins clean up old workspaces? And will branch protection rules be added to diversion, prevent commits to main, only allow via pull requests? Okay, so for the first question, workspaces do not count towards repo storage limits. You can have as many workspaces as you want. What we count at the end of the day is the amount of data that is stored on our web for the cloud, for the non enterprise self-hosted option, we count the data that we actually save. So if you have one repository that's cloned 50 times, then it's the same amount of gigabytes on our servers, and we don't charge for bandwidth. So you should be okay with that. Like for example, if you have like some sort of CI pipeline that has its own workspace, then it never makes any changes, right? It just gets the latest changes and runs the like builds and runs the pipeline. Then it won't count towards anything. And will branch protection rules be added to diversion? Yes. We have a public roadmap that you can look at. I'll send the links in chat later. Just remind me. I'm not sure if it will be like an indie free tier feature, or maybe like pro and above. Some things like granular permissions, etc., that are more organizationally oriented, let's call them, will probably be not on the free tier. But yes, can't remember off the top of my head if we have concrete plans for branch protection, but you're definitely not the first person to ask. So I believe it will come at some point. So that was committing with diversion, simple and straightforward. Now let's say I'm working in a team and I'm doing some feature branching, and I want well, features to live on their own branches so that I have clarity on what's included in the main branch, in the main version of my project. So I want to go ahead and create a branch for a feature. So diversion uses lightweight branching, so we don't copy over any data. So branching is super fast, and it's just a couple of clicks. So through the workspace menu, new branch, my new awesome feature. Gonna create the new branch. You see, I switched successfully. And even if I go into the editor, I can see down here, uh, I hope it's not too small for the screen share. I can see that I'm on the my new awesome feature branch, and nothing changed for me, right? I can just keep on working regularly. So let's add some more meaningful gameplay logic, and it's all the same for me, right? You see, I can't commit because it was grayed out because it was syncing my changes. Now that it finished syncing, the commit changes button is enabled. So I'm gonna now commit, and I can just write another string. And here's our new commit. It's now under my new awesome feature branch. I can see it in the branch graph as well. We have a nice branch graph. And here it is over here. Now, what I want, the next thing I want to show you is I want to show you merging back, right? So I finished working on my gray feature. I'm gonna merge it back. So for that, I'm going to move back into the main branch, right? So right now we are here. Now I'm going to check out my main branch and just use this opportunity to show you all of the commit actions that we have, right? Everything you would expect. You can undo, you can cherry pick, you can revert to an even older commit. So undo all of them sequentially back up until that point. So everything you would expect exists. But right now I'm just going to switch to the main branch. And a couple of things are going to happen. I'm going to say switch. And here we are. We are back on main. I see this icon over here. I'm going to talk about it in a second. And in the editor, I can see still the other branches changes. So it looks like something went wrong, right? I should see the previous version. This is because of the way Unreal handles files. If a file is open in Unreal, it holds it in memory, and it doesn't always refresh what it gets from the disk. So we have a feature for that. You see the small pop-up message over here on the side that incoming updates are pending. So I'm going to reload, and it's going to reload the file from disk. And now I have the new version of the file here. You can see that just like in the desktop app, here I also have this exclamation point. Let's show you the one in the app that I suspect might be a bit easier to see over screen share. What we call this is our merge warning notification. So what this tells me is that someone else has modified this file in another workspace. And this is our answer to file locking. If you're familiar with LFS2 or really any other kind of centralized version control system where you check in or check out files, you exclusively check in or check out. If multiple people are working on the same binary file, it would be at least extremely hard, if not in almost all cases impossible, to merge it back together. And you would have to override, you have to pick one version. So one team member's set of changes would have to override everyone else's. And the way other version control systems deal with that is they use exclusive checkout. So the moment someone else starts working on a file, no one else can even open the file. And these other solutions do this, they achieve this by setting your file system to read only. So if we actually go, let's say, show in Explorer, so I can see the actual file system. If I were to go and click on properties, then I would see that here it is set to read only. But with Diversion, that's not the case. So with Diversion, we don't actually lock you out of your files and force you to only go through the version control if you want to open a text file and modify a few lines. You don't have to go, you're not forced to go through the version control. You're not locked out of your files. We manage it logically through our sync mechanism. So because the moment someone saves a file locally, and our agent, which is the piece of software that lives on your machine and tracks your changes, knows that a change has been made or is being made even before commit happens, even before the file is uploaded. We know that someone's working on a file. So everyone else can be notified of that fact, and you can communicate and try to avoid creating a merge conflict. And inside the app, we can see it with this exclamation point here. And if I click on it, I can see who's working on what where. And again, not very exciting right now because it's just me, but I can see that I made a change on this branch and that the change has been committed. And I would have, of course, gotten the same warning even if the change hadn't been committed. That's just a bit more complicated to demonstrate alone. I would need a team member to show that more easily. That's from the app. But if you go into the editor, thanks to the plugin, which gives us more control over what's going on, not only can I show you the same information inside the editor, that there's a potential conflict, etc., but when I double click to open it, I'm actually prompted. So we call this auto soft locking because they're not really locked. I'm getting essentially the same information here that, another workspace has a newer version of this, and you can always say, okay, well, I don't want to cause any kind of mess, and I can see who's working on the file and communicate and say, oh, maybe you're just moving some nodes around and it's not important, so you can release the file to me and I can, or you'll undo it later and then we don't conflict or whatever. So that's one option. Or the other option is, look, I know what I'm doing. This plugin is not the boss of me, and I want to see my file because I want to work. Maybe I know it's someone who's away on vacation for a month, and I'm not gonna try and reach them and get them to unlock their files from a distance. And I don't need any kind of special admin person or admin privileges to come and unlock the files. I can just open for edit, and I can create any changes, and you can see more warnings are popping up, right? As I work, right? This icon is usually not yellow, right? It's gray. Right now it's yellow, and I keep getting warned, but I can always say override soft lock, and that's it. And I'm ready to commit right now. Grayed out because it's uploading, and right, creating a conflict. And the commit has been created successfully. And I can go into the branch graph and I can see it here. And I can see it in my history, right? Exactly what you would expect. And I can also see that the icon went away because now I have the newest version. So everyone else is conflicting with me. And as you saw, this is cross branching across everything. So it gives you a very high degree of safety when collaborating, even working in branches. Did that all make sense? Any any questions? Yes, no? While you're typing, I want to talk a bit about best practices for version control, actually in general in Unreal. So I would hesitate to say if there are any diversion specific best practices, and if just general best practices for version control in Unreal would cover everything. So first thing I would say, and what I hear a lot of complaints about, is what's called the one file per actor system, which, well, in this map, it's going to be enabled by default. And I think in open world maps or anything with world partition, it's also enabled by default. So if you go into any level, go into the world settings window, and if you don't have that, then you through window you can enable the world settings window. Going to look for the use external actors settings, and you'll see that in the template levels it is enabled by default. And that, like I said, if you start an open world level, it will be enabled by default. But let's create actually a new level just for the heck of it. Where is our map? There you go. Let's create a new level. I'm gonna go over here. You're going to see that it is not enabled. Now, what does it do? What is it for? So what the one file per actor system does is it creates one file for every actor you have in the level, as the name suggests. What do I care? So let's say I have a cube here, right? Some directional light so I can see what's going on, and a cube. There you go. That's great and totally not glaring and painful in my eyes. So right now, if I were to commit, and let's actually commit this, right? Adding my level. See, I'm adding one file, which makes sense because I only created the my file level. I'm going to commit it. Now, if I want to work on this level and make changes to the level, for example, move this actor around and save, you can see that it's going to sync in a second that my level was changed. It was file changed. And that would make it impossible for other people to work on the same level as me without conflicting. So what turning on one file per actor does, to use external actors, what it's going to do is it's going to convert all actors. I'm going to say yes. And now you'll see that I have multiple unsaved files. So this is the level was modified because now it uses the one file per actor. And the directional light and cube are all files in their own right. And now if I go to commit them, right now, it's going to upload the files. I'm going to write converting my level to one file per actor. And now, since each of these is a file, if I make any change, right, it's one file that's been modified, right, because I changed the transform of this actor. If I save it, you're going to see that if I commit, only one file changed. So this makes it possible for multiple people to collaborate working on the same file, and you would only conflict if you make changes to the same actors. For example, if I moved this cube here and someone else changed its material, then we would conflict on the cube file in this level. That's the only way you would conflict. So that's one of the biggest issues that we run into is that people don't have this enabled, and it's absolutely a best practice for working in Unreal. Another one is specifically in blueprint heavy projects, or rather, let me phrase it differently. The one file per actor system, what stands at the core of it is it breaks up your work into a lot of smaller chunks. And generally speaking, that's really good with version control because then you conflict less, because when you make a change, it's for smaller parts. So for blueprints, especially in blueprint heavy projects or in blueprint only projects, you would want to break up your work into as small pieces as you can. For example, by using actor components, or separating your logic into actor components, right? If you're working on a game and it's blueprint only, I can imagine that your main character blueprint is overflowing with logic that doesn't have to be there. So separating into a health component and a damage component, breaking it up into multiple parts would make it easier for you to work, because then when you're working on the health system, you're not changing the character blueprint itself. That also ties into actually knowing and using Unreal's game framework system, which is just the list of special classes that they have, right? Surely everyone would know actor, pawn, character, maybe player controller, maybe game mode, but you also have player state and game session, a bunch of other classes that can all also be blueprints and have their own components. And they each have their own use cases, and you can use it to break up your work into smaller chunks and then conflict less when working with version control. And last but not least, what I would say is regardless of which way you choose to work with version control, which branching strategy you use, you should always keep your commits small, frequent, and self-contained. And that way you can always have safe points of backup in time to go back to, and you can always edit or change your history, right? If you want to cherry pick or if you want to undo certain things, it would be easier if it's in smaller chunks. So that is going to be it from me, I think. Are there any other questions about stuff I said, stuff I didn't say, and anything you always wanted to know but were afraid to ask? All right, John, for you, I have our public roadmap, so you can stay on top of what's going on with us. You can feel free to jump into our Discord and ask questions, and we'll see what other people have to say about us. And if there are no more questions or none at all, then I will thank you very much for your time. Be on the lookout for other webinars we have. There's the next one should be on the 22nd, and we'll be talking about CI/CD with diversion, if I remember correctly. That's the subject we have coming up. And I hope to see you guys in our Discord, in our community. And once again, thank you for your time. Bye bye.